This is Critical Nonsense, our high-low browser about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey asks Aaron about unexpected audiences, but they really just talk about Bluey.
Woo! Everyone here. That's all I had to say, and you knew where I was going. This is what Joey sounds like.
I don't know much. I don't know how I love shoes. This is what a different Aaron sounds like. I do Aaron puns. That's what that was.
Did I tell you I saw the Neville brothers perform at the grand opening when our grad school changed names, got a new building. They did a opening ceremony, and the Neville brothers came to perform.
That's it. That is a wonderful experience.
It was so cool, but so random. I'm like, what? But and I think the guy who had Rick Boyko, who had been the head of the school at that time, but used to run Ogilvy and places like that, probably maybe he knew him because Ogilvy did the cotton commercials or something, it was probably
oh yeah.
You fall into that too easily. It's just so comfortable. You can get there immediately.
It's the curse of the first name. You always have to have Aaron Neville on speed dial. That's just necessary. Which is what I assume is also the reason. And unfortunately, everybody's had to hear Joey and I go back and forth because we are missing the one and only and amazing Jess Vander today. She is out recharging her batteries, and we will see her very soon. Fair winds, Jessica.
Jessica. She's currently at a Tesla supercharging station. That's why it's taking longer because, as you'd expect, we won't go any further than that.
Yeah, exactly. Any housekeeping? Do we have to dust any fan blades? Do we need to make sure that there is gas running to the kitchen oven?
I don't think so. I mean, if Jess isn't here, this place is a mess.
She really keeps us together, which is, I don't know how she does that. While also just being an amazing strategist, human being, and all around creative human. Just want to call all that out.
The Linda Ronstadt to our Aaron Neville's.
Been around the world and Again, I will be ready. I think that's Linda Ronstadt. Did I screw up a been around the world moment? This is really important.
I was just thinking in the moment, the counterpart on I don't know much, but I know I love you was Linda Ronstadt.
You're right. No, you're right. And I was picking I thought I was picking another Linda Ronstadt song because I thought I was creative, and I just wasn't.
Who sings that one?
It was Lisa Stansfield.
You were close. Linda or Lisa, yeah.
Exactly.
L.I.
Man, I am sorry to everyone who listened to this and was like, Powers, that was wrong, is shaking their head, and then they're nodding their head right now if they're still listening. So anyway, Joey, I understand that you have some thoughts on your mind that the world needs to chop up into cheesesteak. So what's on your mind?
Aaron, I want to bring you into the fold of parent conversations right now.
Woohoo!
The hot topics, the hot goss, the exciting news. So, Bluey. Are you I from our pre-conversation, I was going to say, are you familiar with her oeuvre? But I know the answer is nope, not at all.
No. I have watched I think 3 minutes of a YouTube clip once. And that is my exposure to Bluey. So you have a blank canvas here, sir.
And you didn't go deeper?
I will say, and this is slowing down us getting to the question, but I appreciated the charm, and I'll get into it in a little bit more from what I could pick up from that experience. But please, continue.
So, Bluey, a children's show for others who are unfamiliar, based out of Australia. Bluey is a blue heeler dog. She lives with her family, Bandit, her dad Goals, Chili, her mom, and Bingo, her little sister. It is maybe the greatest show ever created for children.
Mhm.
And what's been funny is there's no shortage of parents online talking about how much they love Bluey. I've had the second half of season 3 just dropped this week, but I didn't even know it was coming. I thought season 3 had already dropped. Turns out it was only half of season 3, and I've had no fewer than 6 parents ask me if I like, are you excited for the second half of the 3rd season of Bluey to drop? Or like Wednesday, someone was like, 3rd season dropped today, like second half, like, are you excited? Like, and I'm like, what is going, like, parents are as excited, if not more excited, about new Bluey episodes than children are. And it is like that we've talked about in the past, and one of the things that like Toy Story and Pixar has gotten credit for is like being able to sort of integrate storylines or references or like levels of the content for different audiences. But I don't even know if this is the same thing. And so I wanted to ask you about how should we think about things that are created that wind up being more beloved by audiences that weren't the original target?
I I definitely have a thought about this, and this is like a perfect example of like I'm coming into this completely naive. I don't have any kids. I A lot of my friends with kids are all have kids around the same age. Like there's somewhere between like basically newborn bundle of like skin and 8-9 years old. Pretty much everybody squeezes in that bucket. So I'm bringing that up because I am coming up only knowing and hearing about these things through friends like you and other like people in my orbit who have kids of that age. And what has consistently stood out to me in the way that people talk about Bluey is that I think Bluey was intended for parents.
Mm.
I think Bluey was designed specifically off the back of what Pixar did so well in movies when they were coming out, which is, and I'm gonna ramble just for a second if you'll if you'll indulge me.
I don't know if you've heard this show before, but
Critical rambles is a Sylvian lab. Okay, so I think one thing that I'll hit 4 points. First of all, cable TV. We'll start around that era. When cable TV launched, it was the first time that really advertising shifted to effectively only speak to kids. It was a really watershed moment in like communications media that you could have enough channels to launch a Disney Channel and a Nickelodeon and all these other Cartoon Network things that were originally intended to only focus on kids. And it raised lots of questions around like how advertising needed to exist for kids, whether it should, whether it shouldn't. But the content was, in many cases, kids rule, parents drool. Like, this is only for you. Parents
Yeah.
get out of the room. Then we had, I think, a Pixar moment. And I would say that the Pixar moment happened at the same time that we had Cartoon Network evolving with Adult Swim. And so you had Pixar creating content that needed to appeal to an entire family, because we all know parents have to sit through untold hours of kids programming ultimately now. And so can you entertain the parents truly just as much as you're entertaining the kids and create a bifurcated audience experience? And then you had Adult Swim saying, well, you can use cartoons, you can use media to speak to like college stoners, and that's fine. like adult animation that The Simpsons started can move on. But the reason I bring that up is because the tone, energy, the people and creators who were around animation with what was going on in that 10-year period really was gelling into something that was subversive and for new sensibilities. And that takes me to, I thought it was going to be 4, but it's really going to be 3. That takes me to this like Daniel Tiger phenomenon, which is for the 30 seconds that I saw in my YouTube clip, or 3 minutes that I saw in my YouTube clip, a few things stood out. One is that it screamed to me that this is a really good show that helps parents process the new roles and expectations of being a parent today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was sitting there like, Bandit is cool. Like, that dad is awesome. Like,
yeah, Bandit
the
is
way
goals. Bandit is
he
goals.
really is. It stood out to me so much because I was like, I've never seen a dad on TV in any way, shape, or form. Next to maybe the dad on Steven's dad on Steven Universe, he gets kind of close to that a little bit. But just like, wow, that is patience, heart, caring, teaching, human,
Imagination.
chill, funny, imagination. He's great. And I can imagine parents seeing him as an aspirational figure and also seeing him as a role model for like how not to be exactly like our parents were, let alone previous generations. And I think what that creates to me is like this parental cohesion and community and lingua franca and like cultural artifact that you can pass back and forth between each other to be like, no, you should really check this out. Because like all those things that you're dealing with on your own and that you talk with your friends about to try to figure out how are we supposed to do this now in this context, Bluey got it figured out.
Yeah,
we got to check it with him.
I mean, the show is fat. I think you're 100% right. Like, without even going, like, we could go deep on Adult Swim, like, independently, which is like maybe we should do that at some point. But you're totally right. Like the show is having clear conversations with kids and adults simultaneously, right? Like my daughter is relating to Bluey and Bingo and how they're handling situations, and I'm relating to how Chili or Bandit are handling situations. But what's interesting is like each episode is like functionally a parable, right? Like it is like each episode has like some lesson that it's trying to impart, whether it's to the parents or to the kids or to both, that is fascinating, right? Like, so I'll give you I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I was trying to talk to Emerson about like a lesson on some, like how other people would feel or like why we don't do certain things or like being considerate or something like that. We're having a conversation. She goes, oh yeah. And she said a thing and I was like, what? And she was like, oh, Chili said that you should do this thing. She related it immediately back to Bluey and had like a pithier distillation of it from Bluey. And initially I was like, what are you saying? And I was like, yes, exactly that. And there are like other examples of that where, she's talking about someone else doing something or that she can't do it. And Becky and I are just like, you got to run your own race. Like Chili said, right? You got to run your own race. Like, you can't compare yourself to other kids. Like there's all these instances where we can distill it. But then for me, there are times where I'm like, what would Bandit do? Like I literally have that like in a moment where I'm tired or I am like sort of in a position of like inertia. I don't want to do a thing, but I'm like, oh, she's like a little kid. She doesn't know any different. Like Bandit would just like find a way to play along. And so then I do it. Like Jason, one of our coworkers' husband recently was like, I had a Bandit moment. I was walking. We got snow cones at this thing. B dropped her snow cone. And I had my snow cone. And I did it like a grown-up dad way. And I put all the flavors in all at once. And it was so juicy. And I was so excited. And I was just like, here's my snow cone. And we walked out. And it was like, there's a full episode basically about where he just gives up his ice cream cone because the girls are fighting over one and then it all melts away. And so he just gives them theirs. And it's like, oh, everything's solved. And I was like, man, it's wild to have a show where it's like a 5-minute show that is like making adults cry or like teaching them how to be parents while it's like their kids love it. And I don't know.
Well, and I'd also imagine, I'm curious if this comes up at all too. Like, it appears to, or it appeals to new parents, which are like cusping millennial, zennial. Yeah, there's a weird Gen Z millennial thing with parents right now. And you always talk about the latchkey kids. Like, so many of us had parents that were not
Mhm.
around because they were working so much. And so there's like two things that I relate really deeply to. One is being raised by media, like having a lot of content being what like taught me morals when and ethics and just like how to handle situations when my parents were working. And then the other is the independence that comes with when you're alone. You've got to figure stuff out on your
Mhm.
own. Like, you don't have any adults to ask because like they are trying to like give you a life.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that requires them not being there. So those two things together, we've got a whole generation of parents who like are more aware because we're awash in information in a way that we've never been before, of like all the ways that you could
Yeah.
parent, like all the different styles that exist, while at the same time having an appreciation and a trust in good kids media and that feeling that like I've got to figure this
Yeah.
out. Like,
But like having that mental model, like that algorithm does so much. And what's interesting, I don't know if everyone agrees with this or views it in this way, but like it's a cartoon parent, right? Like that makes it so much less
yeah.
like you're not having
Yeah.
that like parental comparison versus if you like saw another dad in your building or in your neighborhood or something like that, that is like, you're like, man, that dad is real good and I'm not as good as that dad. You start to feel bad for yourself versus like Bandit's a cartoon. He's a blue dog. Like, you
Mhm.
don't have to have that. And like me and my dad have actually had conversations about sort of like, you know, what like I guess now what you would call like transgenerational like trauma dynamics of parenting, whereas like his grandfather was like a complete asshole and like abusive, and then his father was like in the military and kind of it was definitely an asshole and kind of and like he didn't do those things, but like he was sort of impatient at points when we were kids or things like that. And like I can see, right, you just sort of like replicate the behaviors you have and you try and like etch away a little bit. But when all of a sudden when you have this model that it feels like it comes judgment free when you're like trying to work to like break historical cycles, it's super fucking helpful. Like just to be like, it's a cartoon. Like I don't have to feel bad about myself, but if I can use that as a like reminder in a moment, like a what would Jesus do bracelet, it's a what would Bandit do, like it's
Mhm.
great,
Mhm.
you know?
And it's also, I mean, kids TV, a certain type of kids TV is explicitly intended to is to do this job, is to like teach kids about interpersonal
Yeah.
things. Like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, I think, is off the air or like isn't making new episodes anymore. I could be wrong. But like that was a really big one in my brother's house. And similarly, like Daniel Tiger's parental figures are anthropomorphic
Yeah,
tigers.
yeah.
Like, you can see yourself in them and you don't feel that same sense of judgment. But then also the content itself is like you go into it knowing and expecting that what you are going to hear as a parent is intended to teach you something, is parabolized. Like, it's not the same. And like a lot of kids media does this. Paw Patrol, same thing. Like, you try to put little nuggets in there about how to work together and like,
Propaganda.
teamwork. Propaganda. That's very clever, Joey. I'll give
No,
you
I
that
said
one.
propaganda, but
Oh, copaganda. Well, you are also right there, but I'm going to not touch that one today. I'm choosing
but
not
they're
to.
like the flip side to your
Um,
point is like Peppa Pig, where like the dad is like adult and
yes.
they make fun of him and they're like fat dad and like all these things, and like people have written about that being like, you know, like dads get enough negativity over time that like when you're just reinforcing it, like dads are dumb and they don't know how to do anything and whatever, like versus Bluey's like, oh, it's aspirational for dads as opposed to, you know, just being like another thing being like dads are dumb and can't do anything.
This has been a thing, I think, in like sitcoms and other serialized TV that like is, I don't know if it's a hangover from the 50s or what, but like as soon as you codify parental roles as the main character, the dad has to be Al Bundy and the mom has to be like a 50s housewife. And like we've seen in scripted adult entertainment like pushes against that. Like Malcolm in the Middle, great example. Like they really pushed on what each of those characters are. Another sitcom, Home Improvement, famously the woman who played Jill Taylor, like the mom on Home Improvement, which is like such a reductive, like men grunt and women do this. Like it's very much that. She came in with as an actress with a very strong point of view about like pushing the representation of the character beyond just being the Tim, like, and really like considering that. And so I'm putting all that out there because it still feels like, even though we're like 30 years on in this like recognition that parents are full-fledged people and have like full-fledged lives, it still feels like media is like pushing against something. Like there's still so much that is just like mom or dad, and it's dumb dad, and like dad doesn't know anything. He's just like, he's too busy and he just can't understand. And mom is just like the caring one and the one that has to always like make things better. And it's like, ugh.
Did you watch Shrinking?
I didn't. I heard it was good though. What'd you think?
It's so good, but the neighbor dad is this guy, Derek, played by Ted McGinley. I didn't know his name, but you would recognize his face. But he's so it's so good. Like he is sort of like he plays a character that's sort of like floating above the fray around him and is like hilarious. Like I truly, Aaron, when I tell you I cackle, like full blown like cackling, like a flock of geese. Like I'm just
I love
but he is also like aspirational. He's just like happy and doesn't let stuff get to him. And like initially you're like, oh, he's saying these things, is he like being like cynical? And then like over time you're just like, nope, he's just above it. Like Jason Segel's character is coming out of his house and like eating something, and he's like, great dinner, Derek, like your wife's a great cook. And he's like, awesome, I'll enjoy it. If there's any left for me, see you later. You know, like, and you're like, oh, is that bad? Then that's like early things. But then later it's just like, oh no, Derek's just floating above it and is happy and optimistic. And it's just like a different portrayal of like a husband and a dad that is like, he sees everyone for who they are and like loves them and appreciates them and is like not going to be brought down. And you're like, fuck yeah, you know?
So good. I mean, is there a way to tidily, because I'm moving us into Yo MTV wrap up corner. Is there a way to wrap up what we've been talking about?
Can I try one? This is not
Please.
like my forte, but I think the moral of this may be that if we have human conversations that are speaking to people like people, and in the case of Bluey, that means not talking to children as children, but talking to children as human beings, invariably those conversations have a broader relevance to other people by not saying like, you are a kid, hey little dum-dum, your brain's small, or, you know, like, you are a dad and that is all that you are, or any, like, by not being reductive and having conversations about just being humans, like the audience is almost irrelevant and we can all take something away from it.
That was beautifully well done. I'll take that parable, Joey. I think that was a good way of parabolizing our little nonsense into a sachet of things that people should know.
Yeah.
I love it.
Also,
Nice.
side note, what are we watching? The Drag Queen.
Dungeons and Drag. Yes.
Let's go.
Dungeons and Drag Queens. You know that was going to be all of my special thanks. You know what? Should we just go right over to our
let's go.
special thanks? Should we knock on that door?
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Australia. All the bugs are huge and they're all gonna kill ya. Come to Australia. Ba-da-da!
Have an adventure in the kitchen. As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and she's a Bluey. Jess Vander.
We'd also like to thank the T-Boz to my personal chili, sound engineer Alex Contel. Oh, the TLC and Bluey joke. I wanted to make that clear.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and what type of dog would Les be? A
Rottweiler. He'd be a Rottweiler.
Yep. Rottweiler. Les
Yep.
Jacobs.
I love if I did not have my own blue healer, because Rufio's like 70% blue healer, I would have a Rottie. I love loyal, smart as hell, beautiful, get things done.
Yeah.
I guess those are all the ways that I think of
Yeah.
Les. Go figure. Speaking of which, I think the I would like to call them the production pack of Nora Mestrich and Sarah Gilbert, who help keep the lights on and keep things running. Thank you, guys.
And as always, thanks, Lon. Special thanks.
Sloppy.
Special thanks. Dungeons and Drag Queens.
Man. Woo! If you are not watching on Dimension, or on what's it on? Because I just finished the first 2-hour
the
episode
Dimension
on YouTube last
20
night.
crew. I think that's where you would the channel that you would find it in. Brennan Lee Mulligan. Yeah.
He is the best dungeon master that I've ever seen. Watching this made me want to play Dungeons and Dragons again, and I have been on hiatus for 6 years at this point, 5 years at this point. But if you're not watching it, Bob the Drag Queen, Alaska, Jujubee, and Monet Exchange doing their quest. It is. If you don't know if you like Dungeons and Dragons, you should watch this, because we are all Jujubee, just to be clear. 100% novice player, don't understand the rules, don't understand how this works. Juju is my spirit animal anyway, but man, so good.
There are jokes in the explicit jokes, but then sometimes they're just doing these like gestures to each other, like the bag of holding joke. I was like,
yes.
I was like, Becky, between breathless laughs, off of a side joke that they never even actually said the words. She just said,
yes.
And then
you have to know, the best thing about drag queens is that drag queens make every second entertaining. That's what a good entertainer does. And there needs to be a separate show, which is just watching drag queens listen to things. Because man, the listening faces and the posing and the preening
and the number of reapplications of lip gloss from Jujubee.
Oh yes. Oh, constant reapplication.
That could be a drinking game, but it wouldn't last long.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think we would last long. We'd be knocked flat. I would also like to throw out a different special thanks, which is to Married with Children, which got 2 shout-outs today on this episode because Ted McGinley was on Married with Children. Exactly. So we got him, we got Ed O'Neill, Katie Seagal. So Married with Children, major show to break down a lot of the old things about sitcom parents.
I didn't put that together. I mean, I guess it had been so long between when I last saw it, and I'm good at picking out faces. And he's the type of person I'm I definitely recognize him, but whatever, 30 years between seeing someone, you look a little different. But man, you're totally
Just
right. I missed that.
I'm happy to give that to you. You are
What a
welcome.
gift.
I also want to thank Australia puns. For example, what did the kangaroos? No, this is not. Never mind. You can't do this as a. I just wanted to say no. It was gonna be Norway. I couldn't. I'll send you a meme. It'll be in the show notes.
The fun part about having a daughter who loves Bluey, and we like avoided like Coco Melon or any of the shows where I'm like, I just don't want to see that ever. Is now she does things with Australian accents of like certain words or like intonations, where she's like, Dada, you said I could watch two. Like, yeah, I can't even do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like, I'm like
Two.
Yeah. I'm like, ooh.
Oh wait, no, I did it wrong.
No, that was
Germanic accent. Toe.
I think it was right.
Australian?
Sounded good to me.
Toe. There we go. Toe. It'd be like, can I have toe? I've been watching a lot of Top Chef Top Chef World All Stars, and Buddha, Australian. That man's accent is just. It's just.
Wow.
The Australian accent is just awesome. It's wow. I'm sorry. I'm turning into Jennifer Coolidge. I'm sorry. I'm falling in the wrong angle.
We did it. Love you.
We did
Bye.
it. Happy day to you. Bye. I'm sorry. My neighbor's dog got out, and I see the dog in the street, and I really want to just run outside and put her back in her yard. Okay, I'll be right back.
The hero.
Mission accomplished.
We did it.
Rosie is back home. Thank you, listeners. I'm going to be out of breath, and this is going to be an awkward transition back into recording, but not all heroes wear capes.